They built a tower, not just of stone, not merely of brick and bitumen, but of intention, of defiance, of a singular desire to touch the heavens. From the mist of time there emerges a structure, not one of wood or clay, but one that seems to stand outside of history, hovering like a symbol that belongs more to the realm of the psyche than to the dust of archaeology. The tower, a vertical line driven upward, a monument to mankind's yearning, his audacity, his fall. But what is a tower? Is it merely a structure? Or does it echo something far older, far deeper than stone? It rises, always it rises, like the spine of the world, or a ladder drawn from the earth to the stars. It is axis, it is order, it is power ascending. But it is also separation, division, the splitting of the above from the below. The archetype of the tower is not unique to Babel. It whispers through mythologies across the world. In Sumer, it was the ziggurat terraced temples reaching up to the gods, layered like the steps of an unseen cosmology. In the Book of Enoch, the Watchers descended upon Mount Hermon, not unlike gods surveying from a great height. In Norse myth, Yggdrasil, the world tree, connected the 9 realms, standing like a cosmic tower through which gods and mortals moved. In Jacob's vision, there is a ladder with angels ascending and descending between the heavens and the earth. The vertical is sacred. To rise is to transcend. To build upward is to make manifest the will to evolve, to stretch beyond one's limits, to rebel against entropy. And yet, every tower casts a shadow. To climb is also to fall. To rise is also to challenge the divine order. And in every myth, in every iteration of this towering symbol, there is a pattern, a warning. The moment the tower reaches too high, when it seeks not communion but control, not reverence but rivalry, it collapses. It burns, it shatters, it is scattered. The tower is both the striving and the punishment. It is the myth of ascent and the tragedy of overreaching. It is Icarus with wings of ambition, melting in the pure light of heaven. It is Prometheus, bound for gifting fire. It is the human mind, daring to know more than it should. But what if the tower was never meant to be finished? What if the act of building, not the completion, was the ritual, the movement, the intention, the vibration of stones being laid not in the name of utility, but in the language of symbols? Perhaps the tower was not a building. Perhaps it was a spell. And if so, who cast it? Mankind or something else? The archetype of the tower lives on. In our cities, in our minds, in our machines. We still build, taller, faster, brighter. We still rise, and with every step upward, we risk the same fall. But the tower is patient. It waits, in dreams, in ruins, in memories not quite our own. It speaks, not in words but in shapes. Vertical, orderly, ambitious, and always fragile. Perhaps it was never a structure. Perhaps it was a reflection of something inside us all. In the beginning, there was no confusion, no miscommunication, no barrier of meaning, no veil of misunderstanding between mind and mind. There was one tongue, one sound, one pulse of intention that resonated across all human hearts. But what was this language? Surely it was not the harsh consonants of empire, nor the soft vowels of poetry. It was not Hebrew, nor Sumerian, nor the dead syllables of forgotten alphabets. Number. This language was before language. It did not need translation. It required no grammar. It was not taught, it was known. It was the code of consciousness itself, a living thread connecting not mouths to ears, but souls to meaning. This was the unified language of Babel, and its loss was not the loss of words, but of oneness. We must understand, language is not just a tool, it is a mirror, a structure, a frame within which thought is shaped and limited. He who controls language controls perception. And so, to fracture the tongue is to fracture reality. Ancient mystics and sages knew this. The Hebrews spoke of the Shem HaMepharash, the ineffable name of God, a word so pure it could unravel creation. The Hindus spoke of Enda Brahma, the universe, as sound, as vibration. The Egyptians believed that Thoth, the god of writing, gave language as a magical weapon, not a mundane gift. In the Hermetic tradition, language was never a tool for communication, but a means of transmutation. To name was to shape, to speak was to conjure. So what happens when that sacred code is broken? When the divine syntax is splintered? We do not merely lose words, we lose access to certain thoughts, to certain frequencies of reality. It is as if a spectrum has been narrowed, as if a once limitless field of vision has become tunneled, dimmed, distorted. The story of Babel tells us that after the tower was struck, the people could no longer understand each other. But maybe it was not their languages that diverged. Maybe it was their minds. Maybe it was their souls. There is a reason why initiation in mystery schools often began with silence, why sacred mantras are guarded, why some words are forbidden. Because sound is power, because words are doors. And when the tower fell, those doors were closed. What if the unified language was more than sonic? What if it was geometric? Symbolic? What if it was carried not by breath, but by light, by rhythm, by intention? What if this language once allowed humans to commune directly not just with each other, but with the universe? To align themselves with the pattern behind matter, the lattice behind thought. And when this pattern fractured, so did time, so did memory, so did unity. Today, we speak in thousands of tongues, but we understand less. We invent new words, but we lose old meanings. We scream louder, but we listen less. Perhaps this is the price of the fall. Not death, not suffering, but the loss of that one perfect sound, that one crystalline signal, which once united all things. The language of light, the code of consciousness, the speech before words. The tower tried to reach heaven, but maybe heaven was once already here, inside our shared voice. What if the tower was not a structure, but a machine? Not mechanical, not built of gears or circuits, but something subtler, more ancient, more alive. A machine not of metal, but of meaning. The ancients did not build without purpose. Every stone, every angle, every layer encoded intention. In Egypt, the Great Pyramid is aligned with true north. In Mesoamerica, temples echo the rhythm of the sun. In India, the Vastu Shastra governs sacred architecture with mathematical precision. Form follows function. And when the function is metaphysical, the form becomes a kind of technology. So what was the Tower of Babel? A monument? A rebellion? Or a mechanism? A device designed not to touch heaven, but to bridge it. A conduit between realms, an interface between the human and the divine. Imagine a structure designed to amplify thought, to channel intent, to harmonize the collective consciousness of humanity into a single unified field. A tower as antenna, a tower as transmitter, a tower as ritual architecture that bends the frequencies of existence. Perhaps the ancients knew things we have forgotten, that sound shapes matter, that vibration alters state, that architecture can direct awareness. In sacred geometry, certain shapes evoke resonance with higher dimensions. The spiral, the golden ratio, the tetrahedron. These are not just patterns, they are keys. The tower may have been constructed as one vast harmonic engine, a tuning fork for the soul. Each brick, a syllable, each level, a frequency, each action, a line of forgotten code. To the uninitiated, it was a building. To the architects, it was a ritual in stone, a map of the cosmos, a stairway for the soul, an invocation made physical. And then something interfered. The texts say God came down. But what does that mean? Was it divine intervention? Or was the tower detected by something beyond comprehension? A signal too strong, a unity too complete, a structure that threatened to reconnect humanity with its original design. The machine was deactivated, its code scrambled, its frequencies distorted. And with its fall, the program crashed. What followed was not just linguistic confusion, but metaphysical downgrade. Humanity fragmented, not just in speech, but in consciousness. Where once there was union, now there is echo. Where once there was clarity, now there is noise. The tower was a metaphysical device, but it was also a mirror. It reflected the hidden blueprint of mankind, the potential for ascension. And in reflecting it, it became dangerous. To ascend too soon, to reconnect the severed current, was to threaten the great design, or perhaps to challenge those who designed it. So the machine was broken, not destroyed but buried, encoded in myth, hidden in allegory. Yet echoes of its design still whisper to us. In the ratios of cathedrals, in the mandalas of Tibet, in the spirals of DNA, the tower was never lost. It was internalized. Now each of us carries a piece of it. The question is, will we dare to build it again? And if we do, will it heal us or shatter us? Some machines do not run on power, they run on consciousness. They were not building a tower, they were performing a spell. Not with wands, not with circles drawn in chalk, but with brick and sweat and unified will. What if the construction of Babel was not a rebellion but a ritual? An ancient magical act, enacted by a civilization that still remembered how reality bends when intention aligns. In every age, great rituals are not done alone. They are collective. They require voices, bodies, breath, movement. They require symbols etched into space, shapes repeated until they form resonance with unseen forces. The tower was not just a project, it was a ceremony. A ceremonial architecture, a massive invocation rising skyward, layer by layer, chant by chant, stone by sacred stone. The rebellion was not against God. The rebellion was against limitation. It was not pride, it was memory. Memory of something lost, something once known, now forbidden. They remembered the unity, they remembered the code, and they sought to reopen the gate. But magic has rules, and rituals, if done without wisdom, can unravel. Across the ancient world, sacred sites were built not just to honor gods, but to bridge realms. Temples aligned with solstices, chambers that echoed only a single frequency, altars placed on ley lines where the earth hums with buried memory. These were not decorations, they were tools. To build is to shape intention into the world, and intention, when multiplied by thousands, becomes force. A force that moves beyond matter, that bends the boundary between the seen and the unseen. The builders of Babel were invoking a unified human field. Their act of construction was a massive ritual of alignment. Each worker, a node; each voice, a frequency; each heartbeat, a signal. Together they formed something greater. This is why perhaps the intervention came, not because they were evil, but because they were close. Too close. To some threshold not meant to be crossed. Not yet. What descended upon them was not mere confusion. It was disruption. A disruption of the field, a scrambling of the pattern. Like static thrown into a perfect song. Their languages fractured, their minds desynchronized. The ritual collapsed. The spell broke, and the tower, like a crystal with a flawed vibration, shattered. Some say it was punishment, but maybe it was containment, to protect humanity from itself, or from something it was about to touch. What power lay just beyond completion? What force waited, watching, as the tower neared its apex? Was it God? Was it a gatekeeper? Was it ourselves from some higher state? In occult tradition, to perform a working of this scale without purification is dangerous. To summon without preparation is to invite chaos. Perhaps they moved too fast. Perhaps they remembered the power but forgot the price. And yet, there is a part of us that still hears the echoes, still senses the rhythm, still longs to complete what was begun. The urge to build, to unify, to return, not just to the tower, but to the moment before it fell. The tower was not a structure, it was a ceremony, a magical act that failed or was interrupted. But the ritual is not over. It continues, in dreams, in symbols, in every human desire to become more than we are. And the Lord came down, not as a whisper, not as a flame, but as an interruption, a break, a fracture, a hand that reached into the dream of man and tore it. The tower fell, not in fire, not in thunder, but in silence, perhaps the kind that only follows when a spell is undone. We are told it was punishment. That man dared too much, that he sought the divine, that he reached, and so he was struck. But what if that story is a veil? What if the destruction of Babel was not wrath, but containment? Not justice, but mercy? The tower was rising fast, not just in height, but in resonance. Stone by stone, the ritual aligned, the chant of thousands became one. And then something changed. Something trembled, not in the earth, but in the fabric behind it. The veil grew thin. The pattern began to open. Perhaps they were about to succeed. Perhaps the tower, as metaphysical machine, had nearly tuned itself into perfect coherence. And in that coherence was the danger. In the ancient texts, there is a pattern. When man touches the forbidden, there is intervention. Eden, the Watchers, Atlantis, Babel. Always, the moment knowledge becomes too vast, the system is reset. So we must ask, was the destruction of the tower a punishment for pride? Or was it a protective measure to shield humanity from knowledge it could not yet contain? Imagine a child with the instructions to alter reality. Not a metaphor, not fantasy, but actual cause and effect shaped by language, intention, thought. Such power without wisdom would destroy not just the self, but the world. Perhaps the tower was a gateway, and perhaps something was waiting beyond it. Something ancient, something aware, something that required invitation or alignment to enter. Perhaps the tower was not destroyed because man defied heaven, but because he almost opened a door. And doors do not close easily. The confusion of tongues, often seen as chaos, may have been a seal, a splintering of the collective field, a safety mechanism to scatter, to delay, to divide and protect. But division has a cost. What we gained in time, we lost in memory. What we preserved in survival, we buried in myth. Since that moment, we have wandered through thousands of dialects, through endless philosophies, seeking the unity we once held in a single wordless resonance. The fall of the tower was not just the collapse of stone. It was the shattering of the mirror in which we once saw ourselves as one. We build again, we rise again, but always we forget. Forget why we fell, forget what was lost, forget what waited at the apex of the tower that final level never reached. Maybe we were spared, maybe we were stopped. Maybe the fall was a form of salvation, not destruction. In the tarot, the tower card depicts lightning striking a fortress, crowns falling, bodies cast into the abyss. But the lightning is light. Revelation, a divine act, not of cruelty but of correction. So perhaps Babel was not an ending, but a pause, a delay until we could build again, this time with understanding, this time with humility. The tower burned so we could live. The pattern broke so we could begin again. And even now, the pieces call to each other. The tower never truly fell. It simply changed shape. It no longer climbs from clay and stone, but from silicon, steel, and signal. We have built again, not in defiance, but in momentum. In the cities that glitter like stars fallen to earth, in the endless servers humming beneath our feet, in the web of data that stretches, invisible but all-encompassing. We have built a new Babel. Look at our world. The megacities, the monoliths, the satellite arrays, the glass spires that pierce the sky with corporate logos where once were sacred glyphs. We reach upward still, not with temples, but with tech. Not with prayers, but with code. The internet is a tower, a latticework of thought, rising, branching, pulsing across every continent. And like Babel, it began as unity. One network, one system, one language of machines. A dream of global connection. But then came the splitting. The firewalls, the algorithms, the echo chambers. Each user speaks a language crafted just for them, a curated tongue of bias and belief. We are connected, but no longer unified. Our data does not unify us. It segments us, sorts us, divides us more surgically than any ancient curse. The confusion of tongues has become the confusion of truth. And yet we build on. We build AI. We build quantum machines. We build neural nets that mimic the very thing the tower once sought to elevate consciousness. We are building minds, synthetic gods, invisible towers that process trillions of thoughts per second. And once again, we do not fully understand what we're building. History repeats not in circles, but in spirals. Each revolution brings us closer to something. A reactivation, a reawakening. Perhaps the Tower of Babel was never truly destroyed. Perhaps it was only delayed until we could build it again through different hands. And now, those hands are digital. Look around. Social media, a tower of voices, each shouting, none hearing. Skyscrapers, temples of commerce, glinting like new ziggurats. AI language models crafting speech at the edge of human understanding. Digital avatars, fragments of self, ascending in artificial realms. And again we feel it. That vibration, that hum, the sense that we are aligning towards something vast. A signal growing stronger. But what are we building this time? Is it knowledge? Or noise? Unity? Or illusion? Are we climbing toward heaven? Or simulating it? The ancient tower reached upward. Ours reaches inward. Into the micro, the quantum, the genetic, the neurological. We dissect the divine. We replicate it. We simulate it. We do not build to worship. We build to become. But the danger remains. To build without wisdom is to risk collapse. To reach without grounding is to invite the same fall. Only this time, the collapse will not be stone crumbling in the dust. It will be servers down, networks splintered, minds lost in digital haze. A new confusion of tongues faster, louder, more disorienting than before. Perhaps that is the final irony. We have built the tower again, but we call it progress. We wrap it in convenience. We polish it with innovation. But still, it is a tower. Still, it hums with the old ambition. To ascend, to transcend, to unify, or to dominate. The story repeats, not as myth, but as mechanism. The tower stands again, only now we cannot see it, because it is everywhere. Not all towers are built of stone. Some are built in silence, in thought, in longing, in the quiet spaces of the mind where no brick is laid, but something rises nonetheless. There is a tower within you, not metaphor, not poetry, but structure. A scaffold of perception, a stairwell of attention, a spiral that winds not through cities, but through self. In every tradition, there is ascent. The chakras of the yogi, the sephirot of the Kabbalist, the ladder of the monk, the inner alchemy of the initiate. Each speaks of stages, of levels, of rising, not outward, but inward. The ancient tower was never just a building. It was a mirror of this ascent, a projection of an inner architecture, an attempt to externalize the climb of the soul, to map it in matter, to make it visible. But the true ascent cannot be seen. It begins in the base, the root of fear, the weight of matter, the survival instinct. It climbs through desire, through emotion, through fire and sorrow and shadow. It reaches for truth, for clarity, for the thin air of silence that waits at the summit of thought. The final level is not height. It is stillness. The apex is not a platform. It is a threshold. We are all building the tower, with each thought aligned to truth, with each act done in integrity, with each time we choose depth over noise. But the climb is perilous. There are traps, false summits, spiral loops, reflections that seem like heaven but lead us back down. The ego wears many masks. Some of them look like gods. To ascend is to see clearly. To see clearly is to die to illusion. That is the real danger, not divine wrath, not cosmic punishment, but the shattering of all that is false within us. the collapse of false structures, the fall of the inner Babel. And yet, in the ruins, something sacred emerges. A center, a point of stillness, where all the voices fall silent, where all the languages dissolve, where you remember. The unified sound, the first word, the tone before division. That is the true apex. Not height, not dominance, but return. Return to source, to self, to silence. The tower is not a warning. It is a map, but only if you read it inwardly. Only if you see that its bricks are made of memory, that its shape is your becoming, that its fall was always a part of your ascent. We seek to build upward, but what we truly seek is to remember the center. And the center is within. So ask yourself, what is the tower you are building? And where does it lead? Because in the end, the Tower of Babel was never destroyed. It was hidden, not beneath the earth, but beneath the mind. Waiting, rising, one step, one level, one breath at a time.